Real ones with me, I know we gon' beat the odds. Yup. Counterfeit. Guess it from the thought of it. People fake. Think they need to start a kid. Tryna be real. This right here to start a kid.
Huge thank you to today's sponsor, Giant Snacks. Giants is a small family-owned business that specializes in premium flavor and giant snack sizes.
From sunflower seeds and pistachios, pumpkin seeds and cashews, Giants has all the great snacks you need.
Don't forget some of the great flavors that they offer, from dill pickle to sweet Thai chili.
Or whatever flavor you're craving.
Check out the newest flavor that just arrived in stores.
Big Easy cashews and Big Easy sunflower seeds.
Available now online or in a store near you. Huge thank you to Giant Snacks for sponsoring this podcast.
Now let's get back to the podcast.
Brushmark Signs is a family-owned and operated business out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota.
They are a one-stop shop for visual marketing.
Their designers can create logos, banners, indoor and outdoor signs,
digital message boards, decals, and apparel,
as well as promotional items, window tinting, and more, and they ship nationwide.
They are a full-service sign company from start to finish.
Their install team is experienced, knowledgeable, and dependable, so if you're interested,
give them a call at
218-847-3599
or visit brushmarksigns.com.
Thank you guys for sponsoring this podcast.
Now let's get back to the podcast.
Welcome back to the Beyond the Spotlight podcast, hosted by myself. My name is Jack.
And I'm Aiden.
And today's guest is a friend of mine, Dustin Hill. He's the founder of Burkett Customs, known for his crafting stunning knives and 1911 gun grips from rare materials like meteorite, Damascus, and Mammoth Tusk. After a 20-year career in law enforcement, Dustin has reinvented himself as an entrepreneur, overcoming challenges like PTSD to build a thriving business. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the show, Dustin Hill.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Before we get started, we want to thank Giant Snacks for being an amazing sponsor, as well as Brushmark Signs. So, besides from what I said in your intro, for people who don't know you, can you give a little elevator pitch about yourself?
Sure, man. My name's Dustin. I'm from West Fargo, North Dakota. I graduated from there in 1996 and went on to Alexandria Technical College for 2 years, a law enforcement academy, and went through some things while I was there, and went on to work in a prison, medium maximum security private prison in Appleton, Minnesota, as a special operations response team officer and basic CO. And then I went on to Cass County, North Dakota, and got my North Dakota police officer license and worked part-time in the jail there and doing transports. After that, that's what brings me to Wahpeton, and I've been here for 20 years now. I came down to work for the Southeast Multi-County Agency Narcotics Task Force, working undercover narcotics for 4 years, and then went on to the great city of Wahpeton Police Department for 14 and a half years, where I was a canine guy for most of it. I had 2 canine dogs, Striker and Gypsy. I was a drug recognition expert and a patrol rifle operator, methods of instructor for law enforcement subjects, and dive rescue recovery officer. And there's been some, real high-profile cases that came out of that, local to North Dakota. After dealing with some PTSD stuff, and we can get into that, I moved on to starting my own business and this new life that I love.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm married to a Wahpeton police officer. She's a canine. And I have a daughter who's 16 named Cadence May.
Couple of new businesses, right? I mean, These are both, you're representing on both of them here.
Always, man.
Got a brand.
So, my wife and I own Pinewood Kennels of dog boarding and daycare in Breckenridge, and then I own Burkett Customs. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So right from the beginning, how did you know that you wanted to be a police officer?
So I had some childhood trauma things that I dealt with. I had a real, I don't want to say rough time, but because just growing up without a dad or with a stepdad that wasn't awesome. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be that thing that when people needed somebody and they would call out into the night, this is not supposed to sound like Batman or Superman, but when people needed help, I wanted to be the one that went and feel important. Mm-hmm. So that's what led me to that.
So kind of being the person in your life that you didn't have.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And to be that person for people that don't have that.
Yeah.
And I had a West Fargo police officer step up and let me do some ride-alongs and show me what law enforcement was about. Donnie Loberg. If you're out there, man, you're a rock star. And that just led me to a career in law enforcement. And at the time, I did my best to make myself so that I couldn't be a police officer by doing some dumb stuff. But, it progressed and it worked out well, and I'm blessed and happy to be here. So,
Any notable moments from that beginning of being a police officer? Any notable times?
just helping people, man. I think like my proudest moment as a police officer, I don't know if you remember the Trista Martin stuff where she was stabbed 17 times. And myself and Sergeant Nordic were the ones that responded, and we were able to help her. And between us and the EMTs and the medical staff and like her own will to survive, like that girl is a gangster. Like she is the toughest person I've ever met. And getting to play a small role in that, and then receiving, like, as a police officer, you get awards when you do things, and that's not why you do it. If that's why you're doing it, you're in the wrong profession. But
Right.
getting an award from like her family that her family made for me, and then presenting it to me at her fundraiser banquet was kind of the highlight of my career. Like that's, people that take the time to like recognize the sacrifice that you made and the trauma that you're going to carry from that incident for the rest of your life. Like, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because it's awful, but I mean, you have a person basically that's exsanguinated out on the street, and they look like they're gone, and like nobody prepared me for the amount of that I would see.
Yeah.
Stuff like that just weighs heavy on you, but they're notable and they're part of your story, and you use it to grow and you use it as fuel for things like this, with you guys and for other, doing this. I just did another podcast with Ed Calderon, Ed's Manifesto, and to see like the next generation of officers that took over after I left, watching it and like maybe gleaning some information on how to like survive policing, and that means the world to me. Like that's the reason why we do this.
Yeah. And coming on and talking, like you just said, people that watch this can maybe take what you learn and bring it into their life. And before we get too far, I want to try and go a little bit in order. We kind of jumped ahead there.
That's all right.
But what was your childhood like, and like how were you in high school?
Oh man, high school was a trip, so I showed up for very little of it.
Sure.
I just didn't go. It was weird because like I had a teacher pull me aside, and I've like say, you mentioned like over and over again that you want to be a police officer. Well, you got to show up, bro. Like you got to be here. Yeah. And that was a motivator for me to do just enough to like get through high school. I had about a week before graduation, my history teacher, Mr. Bame, called my mom's like, "Hey, Kathy, you can order the buns." Like he graduated. So it was touch and go there. And I'd already gotten into Alec Tech. So it was kind of a big deal that I had to finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there was some things like, there's a lady in town here that it's a mutual friend of ours, Tammy Jurack.
Sure.
And she was an art teacher for me. And like, she just was a good role model. Like you'll have teachers like, my other teacher, Mr. Anderson, like they knew that like stuff wasn't awesome at home, and like I was kind of going through some stuff. So they made it, Mr. Anderson made a deal with me. Hey, like you come in and you do your homework for 2 hours in the morning or an hour and get it done. And then whatever you have left for time wise, you can just use whatever art supplies you want, do whatever art stuff you want. So that little bit of time that those people took out of their day, and there was a lot of other teachers. I mean, I'm going to be honest, teachers are the most underappreciated, underrepresented group in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, police officers get on all the time, but like teachers, man, every day, like they're with your kid more than you are. Mm-hmm. And why are you not treating them or looking at them like they're shaping your child? Mm-hmm. Part of the problem we're at in this country today is people just can't learn. They're not learning. They're not given the opportunity. We have so many special interest things going on in these kids' lives, but they're not getting the basics, the math, the history. There's a saying, those that don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. And I'm sure I butchered that, but we need to look at the way teachers are treated. And I'm here today because of the way teachers were there for me. So
yeah, it's more than just like teaching you a subject. It's like not like a parental role, but like a leader in your life, someone you can look up to a lot of times.
You look at like Mr. Nepple.
Yeah.
Like providing resources for kids to like follow their dreams and do things. You don't get a lot of teachers like that because they're burnt out and they're mistreated and they're
underpaid.
The pay is disgusting, but
Yeah.
Their lack of sick days so they can go be with their family. It's just not great. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something like our local school board can really take a look at and see what they can do to help that.
Touching on Justin, he was my teacher as well, and he's already helped me and two of my friends start LLCs, and then other students just like help see if they want to go into business. So he's been huge in my life. Touching on your art teacher, you kind of do art now for your job, for your business.
Yeah, dude.
Touch a little bit on that and how that connection has happened.
So I like to do things that nobody else does. And that's what got me into like making knives with weird materials that no one else uses. And my granddad used to like take me out to go hunting for arrowheads and like bones and then we would make knives. And I was like, how can I put those two things together? And that's where that art background comes in, where you learn color and contrast and like, lights and darks and how to place that in a way that people are going to catch their eye and like it. And so that's kind of where that came from. And then one day I was in my garage working on a knife. And at this point I was working on knives and still working full-time as a police officer. So that started to be kind of like my therapy for like a crappy day. Like I'd go out in the garage right after work and spend an hour or two working on knives. And then it progressed into like, cause I was using weird materials that no one else used and in an artistic way. I had caught the eye of Jeremy from Dark Alliance Firearms, who's a firearms modifier, builder, artist extraordinaire out of Las Vegas. And he called me up one day and he's like, hey man, your stuff's cool. Can you make us a set of grips for this John Wayne build? And I'm like, who is this? Because like I just started Instagram. I mean, we're in a town of 8,000 people, and so I made something for him, and he was like, "Yeah, that's not great. That's not what we wanted." And I'm like, "Oh, well, this guy." And I drove a mile out of town with a chainsaw and like cut a little piece of wood off an old fence post and machined it into some gun grips and send him a picture with like my middle finger. He's like, "We love you. You're our guy." Like, I was like, well, this is the first time me being a jerk paid off. Like,
Yeah.
Speaking of a jerk, you're supposed to call somebody yesterday and you didn't. Your sister on her 30th birthday.
Oh,
You better get your phone right now and call her.
not good.
Like, call her immediately. She is
I
so
should do that.
angry. You should call her right now.
When did you talk to her?
Like yesterday. She was mad in a hornet. Get your phone and call her right now.
If I call her, okay, I'll call her. I bet you even if I do, she won't answer.
I don't know, dude. Like, she was pretty. Like 3-0 is a big thing for ladies, dude.
Yeah. Hold on, I got something to say on that.
Okay.
You know how I know it's a big thing? She sent, I don't even remember what it was, but she sent some like patio, I don't even know, to our family and like requested, hey guys, can you all pitch in and get this for me for my 30th birthday? Most Sophie thing ever.
Yeah, you got to call her, man.
I'm calling her
It'll
right
make
now.
my whole day.
Hello.
Hey, I'm with Dustin here on the pod and just wanted to call and wish you a happy 30th birthday yesterday.
Oh, interesting. Who is this?
This is Jack. This is Jack,
Oh,
your brother.
okay.
Yeah, just
Did
wanted.
you forget?
No, I didn't forget.
He's getting a hard time now.
Here it
Now I feel bad.
goes.
Yep.
Here it goes.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yes, I might have forgotten. But I pitched in on your present, so that's got to be worth something, right?
Well, I would be more appreciative if you just went out of your way to get me another one.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I've sent a lot to Dad of what I want, so go ask him.
All right, I will.
Have a good day, Sophie.
Yeah, happy 30th birthday. Love you. All right, bye. God.
Burn.
Oh, that's tragic.
Called out on the podcast.
Yeah, I had to, man.
Oh,
She
of
was so
course.
hurt. She's just like a tiny little elf, and she was just sad.
Did anybody else not call her, or was it just me?
It was just you. Like, she rambled off a whole list of the people that did call her.
Oh, well.
Yeah, you should
that's
feel
all right.
great shame.
I do. Hopefully she heard it on the radio. We called my dad and I called in to KBMW and they had it on the radio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Gotta be worth something.
Oh, that's definitely worth something. See, if she would have told me that, I wouldn't have been like, you got
I don't even think she heard it, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
But that's okay.
Awesome, man.
Okay, back to your story.
Yeah.
Back to your story. So you've done a lot with law enforcement. We want to talk a little bit
Depends
about
on who you ask, but yeah.
Well, so many different jobs with being a police officer for 14 plus years, undercover with the what is that called again?
The Southeast Multi-County Agency Narcotics Task Force.
Yeah.
It's called something else now.
I'll have to try and memorize
Yeah,
that.
it's like Beyond the Trees or something, like
Oh, sure.
Tree Dweller Task Force or something. I'm not
Okay.
sure what it is.
Can you touch on that a little bit? What was your day-to-day job like for that?
For like undercover?
Yeah, it had to be like super interesting.
So it was wild. So I showed up and I like to tell everybody like I was the best of the best for the candidates for that. I was the only one that applied.
Oh, sure.
So I was in the jail in Cass County and I saw like this like thing come across the I don't know what they call it now, the NIC system or whatever for dispatch, and they're like, hey, we're looking for task force officers. We will hire like immediately. And I never went in there. So like you talk about like faith in God and without getting into that too much, like that was like some major intervention in my life. So I come down here and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to get to drive Ferraris and like work undercover. And like, I didn't get to drive any Ferraris.
Honda Civic.
Yeah. A Honda Civic from a that like was missing, had like a fake tire on it.
Oh, a donut.
Yeah, the donut. So I showed up and I got all my gear and like they sent me to some training, some like DEA school and the North Dakota BCI school and a couple other ones. And I came back and I'm like sitting at my desk for like a week and I just kept moving stuff around like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Like this is, and I'm like, do we sit here and wait for a case to come in? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So we went out and did some surveillance on a known place that they'd been working on before I came along. And we had
Like
gone
monitoring for drugs and stuff.
like looking at the come and go traffic and like what bags were hanging out there and what like.
Did you work with any other undercover people or just you?
So there was two other officers on the task force at the time that I started.
Okay.
I was the only one that like did actual UC work, like actual undercover buys and stuff. I had a background in not being the best kid. So like I was familiar with that life.
Sure.
It wasn't a stretch for me by any stretch of the imagination. I had kind of like my biological dad wasn't there, but like when I was around him, like, his like family some of the family people I remember like having just a table, like cutting up for whatever. And I was little. I mean, I was probably 7 or 8 and that's one of my earliest childhood memories. And I remember my aunt on his side taking me back in the bedroom and letting me like play with her, like a coloring book in like her jewelry box. And like, while they did their crime stuff. And it was wild to me, like seeing that. But then it was like a superpower when I went to work undercover because like I was familiar with that world. I was familiar with the subtle things that you do when you go to meet these people and to not look like a cop. And so I had gotten a job working undercover at a bar in an area that like we were trying to get into for many years long before I came along. And I was able to shut down a pretty good meth manufacturing, stolen property ring right away early on in my career, and that was a big deal.
Wow.
They were just selling it out of the bar?
No, the bar was completely innocent. That was just a means to an end to get me into the Hankinson community. Like I had to when I finally like got found out that I was a cop, which is a whole nother story in and of itself. But like I had to bring in the bar owners and be like, hey guys, I'm sorry. Like I've been lying to you for like the last however long it was, a couple months, 6 months.
I remember you mentioned you like got fake arrested, right?
Yes.
And then you felt like your loyalty was like gone because
They
came
called
in.
and they're like, hey, we want to bail you out. And I was like, oh man, I feel like a piece of
yeah, because
like these people care about me. Like, and I'm not anything. Like every single story I've told them about me is a lie. Like none of it's true.
That's hard.
And it was hard. And it's something I deal with day to day, you know, like it was a means to an end. And we had to get like these people that were selling they actually had a place they called the Gray Farm. And it was a lady that would like, they would make, and they would trade it to like local people, kids too, and give them a shopping list to go out and break into farmsteads. And then they would come back and bring like a generator, and then they would pay them, and they had a list of like what they would pay them for each item.
Wow.
So it was like a Silk Road shopping list, like a black market shopping list with like just dirt merchantry. Like, I mean, these people preyed on adults and children alike. And, you know, some of the younger people that I dealt with, like they even called this lady like mom.
Wow.
Like they were terrible people. And like all the lying and all the garbage that led up to that, like it needed to be done. And somebody needed to go in there and shut that down. And it was super cool. It got to be me. But like, I mean, we had agents come down from Fargo. We had a surveillance helicopter. We had an informant in there at the time before we dropped in and busted him wearing a wire, and he was doing and left, like with the wire on, left in the middle of the drive-by.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a cluster, but like we ended up getting in there and getting them and shutting it down, and it was a huge deal. It took us months and the sheriff's department months to get that property back.
So you just communicated with the police this whole time, I'm assuming, saying like, this is what's going on right now. And then they just planned one day and you were like, this is going to be a good day to do it. And then pretty much just like swarm in like the movies.
Yeah, dude, I planned it. Like I laid it out, like who's doing what, you know, and I'm like a kid, man. I'm like 20, I don't know, 26, 25, 26, 20, somewhere in there. And I'm like, all right, you go there. And I'm like writing on the chalkboard and I'm just like shaking. And these old guys are like, settle down. It'll be fine.
Did you have the tats and stuff at the time?
No, dude, I was a kid, man. I got the tattoos.
I was wondering what the image was like and you still looked like.
I don't know that I could have grown a beard back then. So, I mean, I was baby faced, but like, as you can tell, my mouth can talk me into situations that I probably shouldn't be in, either good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's where it paid off, you know. I mean, like I drank with those people, I hung out with them. Like they're people I wouldn't piss on if they were on fire now, like, you know, but addiction's a hell of a thing. And I deal with that myself with alcohol. It wasn't a stretch for me to hang out with these people because these were my people, you know. And fortunately I had, you know, people in my life, strong male role models that picked up when people couldn't or didn't do what they should have. So I'm very fortunate in that aspect. Like that's where Burkett comes from. Like I named it after my grandfather's last name because like without him, I wouldn't be here, you know? And, you know, him and my grandmother and my grandma and her faith. I was a terrible kid and I skipped school all the time. Like we talked about, but like she always made me go to a Wednesday religion class and made sure that I like graduated from that. And if I would have put as much effort into that as into school, I'd probably be an attorney right now or whatever. So,
Did you stay with them most of your childhood? Or with your mom?
No, I lived with my mom and my stepdad, and like a lot of friends. Like I'd couch surf a lot.
Sure.
I had some real good friends growing up that like, I don't know if they knew like that my stepdad and I didn't like vibe at all. Like there was it just wasn't good. And at that time, then my mom started getting into, like she had gastric bypass and taken fen-phen, so she had lost a ton of weight.
Oh, yeah.
And she just went down like this doom slide of like pills and booze and ended up passing away later on. I'd just gone to the PD, I believe, and my sergeant at the time and one of the investigators came to my house and was like, hey, your mom died from drinking and in the backseat of some car, and it was in my old task force area. So like there was a lot of trauma that went along with that I carry forever. Like, I mean, you know, you think about like, oh God, if I would have just busted those people, like I knew that they were just not good people around my mom. And I told them like, you need to stay away from her. And, apparently I wasn't scary enough, you know, at the time, but that later shaped me into like what you see today with the tattoos and the beards and that kind of thing. So yeah.
How did we first like connect? Cause it was more with my siblings and me right away.
Yep. Like I know your sister real well, and I worked, you know, your dad was a patrol officer when I was a patrol officer, and we partnered up on a lot of things. He was a good cop, is a good cop. And that, you know, watching his ability to like communicate with the public and work with the public and be a police officer that served, not just protected, like he was respected and people would come talk to him. And I admired that. I tried to emulate that. So like early on, there was some really good police officers in our community that like would try to help us younger guys out. And I remember one time your dad pulled me aside and he's like, dude, don't treat people like that. Like you got to live in this town. Sure. And that stuck with me like right away. Like, oh, okay. Like a light click, like, hey, we're not thugs. We need to help out, you know?
Yeah.
You can enforce the law without being a jerk. So,
sure. Yeah.
And depending on who you asked, I mean, there's a lot of people that would agree with that, and there's a few that wouldn't. But
sure.
A good example of that, I was having dinner with my wife the other day at the Wilkin, and like it's our favorite place to eat. So like when we get a chance, we'll go eat there. And we're sitting in the corner, not doing anything, and this guy comes up to me and shakes my hand, and I'm like, he looks familiar, but like I can't. And like a couple cases I worked, like had him sent away for a long time.
Wow.
Like years and years and years. And like we busted him a few times when I was working narcotics and patrol. And like for somebody that you send away to prison that long to come up and shake your hand, like you had to do something right. Like, you know, so a lot of that I gleaned from your dad and from other older police officers that were there before me. And so that's kind of how we came into knowing each other. And then
one thing I want to touch on, that similar story for my dad. We drove past. I was in the car with my parents, and I don't even remember. It was a few years ago. We drove past someone out in their yard, and he goes, "Hey, Officer Johnson," says hi, whatever. And then we drove away, and my dad's like, "Yeah, I've arrested him a few times," or whatever. And I'm like, that's just so crazy that like they still have conversations with you like you're a normal person, you know?
Well, you are a normal person. You just
right.
wear a uniform for, 8 hours a day.
But it's cool that he didn't get mad at him for arresting him, you know? And
yeah, and the flip side of that is there's people that are like scary dudes. And I had one guy when I was with my daughter, and I think about this and it bothers me, but like I gave him the look, like if you come over to me and mess with me while I'm with my kid, I will ruin your day in Walmart. Mm-hmm. And it scared the shit out of my daughter. Like she was just little. She'd never seen that side of me. So for her to see that was, I talk about it now, and that's a PTSD response to a situation. Like most people just go on their day and like, yeah, whatever, dude. But like I'd seen that guy in a violent situation and so I'm aware of what he's capable of, and I'm certainly aware of what I'm capable of. So, her have to see that side of dad wasn't my favorite thing in the world and wasn't my favorite reaction, but I think I'd still act that way again if anybody was around her. So
that's just a protective dad in you, I think, coming out.
I don't know, man. Like it was a lot.
Well, and your experiences too. That's a tough thing. Yeah. I mean,
but how do you articulate that to like a 7 or 8 year old kid?
Right.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is a bad man, and daddy looked way worse than this bad man in that situation. So
Sure.
So when you were undercover, how did you transfer from becoming undercover to now working in, well, not now, but working in Wahpeton?
So I actually was stationed here. Like that's what brought me to Wahpeton, was for the task force here. And we covered like a 7-county area in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota.
Wow.
So there was different sheriff's departments that were on board with us. And then we worked under the direction of the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation. They were the head of the task force.
So you had like 3 officers you mentioned that had to cover 7 counties just trying to find drug deals that were happening?
Or like patrol guys would send us information or a public tip line or that kind of thing. So it's a big area and it's daunting, but it's a necessary evil, and there's no pretty way to do drug enforcement.
Yeah.
Like there's no pretty way to kick a door down, and you traumatize kids, you traumatize everybody as well as yourselves going in and doing that. Like, it takes a special person to not know what's behind a door and then just stand in front of it and kick it down. Like that's dumb. Like if anyone as a kid told me that, like, hey, you're going to kick doors down, I'd be like, that sounds really, really cool. And now as an adult, I'm like, that's really, really dumb.
But it's brave, though. You have to go into those situations.
I don't know if bravery was involved in any of that. I was terrified every single time. Like, it's just how you are going to go into a situation that you're going to do your best to control, but it's not a controllable situation a lot of times. And the way that you can mitigate that is through training and through a plan. And when we first started, there was no training or plan. It was 5 guys with a battering ram, and like, today it's your turn to go first. Today it's your turn to go first.
Sure. Wow. Sure.
And so, funny story about that. I had gotten like all the city PD guys together and did this big briefing, and they're all rolling their eyes because like I'm a kid, And we go to this trailer house on the south side of Wahpeton, and this is Chief Thorsenson's favorite story. And I'm like, I can hear somebody flushing the toilet. I'm going to break the door down. And it's a trailer house door, man. They open out. Like,
oh my gosh.
So I'm pounding on this door, and I go, I'm going to kick it. And I go to kick it, and I bounced off the door, and I like fell backwards off the deck, and like there was a bunch of garbage and crap on there. So I'm like falling down, hitting each like piece of shit that's on the ground. And I look over, and there's like a big dog barking at me, and I'm like, did I get shot? Like, am I okay? And they're like, bah! And they're all just rolling. Like, we couldn't even do a search warrant. They're all laughing so hard.
Oh my gosh.
Tears are rolling down their face. And like, I get up, I get to the top of the door, and I go, and the door's unlocked. And I open the door, and I'm like, we do our thing. And like, I think we got like one marijuana plant that was like 2 inches high. So it was a grand fiasco for nothing.
Oh, man.
So that followed me for a while. Like, you ever want to be like taken down a notch, like do that. Like, that took me down a couple notches for a while.
They gave you some shit
still to this day. And that was 20 years ago. So
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, going back, how did you transition from the drug task force to being a police officer in WAP? Huge thank you to today's sponsor, Giant Snacks. Giants is a small family-owned business that specializes in premium flavor and giant snack sizes.
From sunflower seeds and pistachios, pumpkin seeds and cashews, Giants has all the great snacks you need.
Don't forget some of the great flavors that they offer, from dill pickle to sweet Thai chili.
Or whatever flavor you're craving.
Check out the newest flavor that just arrived in stores.
Big Easy cashews and Big Easy sunflower seeds.
Available now online or in a store near you. Huge thank you to Giant Snacks for sponsoring this podcast.
Now let's get back to the podcast. New year, new goals. If one of yours is to get stronger, we've got just the thing for you.
That's right. Meet Alpha Progression, the ultimate app for building muscle and tracking your fitness progress.
Whether you're at a fully stocked gym or just have some equipment at home, Alpha Progression creates a fully custom plan just for you.
It's like having a personal trainer in your pocket.
Go to alphaprogression.com/beyondthespotlight to sign up. And here's the best part. Our listeners get 20% off their first purchase.
Don't wait. Start crushing your New Year's resolutions with Alpha Progression now. Now let's get back to the podcast. So yeah, going back, how did you transition from the drug task force to being a police officer in WAP?
Okay, so I had met a gal that is my daughter's mom, and she was interning for social services there. And we went on a date, and we started dating, and like, I kind of started settling down a little bit. I'd been sober for about 1.5 years. Like, I got sober halfway through working undercover because it was like time. Like, you can't drink like that and live a life,
Yeah.
And so I think had I not met her and had I not got sober and got like settled way down, I never would have got hired by the PD, because I know initially when I talked to the chief, he's like, yeah, we're not going to hire you. You need to get your shit together. And and so I did. And they ended up hiring me. And then because of my background in narcotics and so on, Chief Anderson at the time was Officer Anderson with the canine dog. And they were promoting him to sergeant. He's like, I know that you'll do a good job with Stryker and take care of him, and I love him. Like, so like I got to be the canine guy like pretty early on, and that's how I transitioned. So
Sure. And the canine, you say pretty early on, does that normally happen to police officers who have a little more experience, or is it just like?
Yeah, for the most part, they try to have a more seasoned officer, but at the time it was an old department. They had guys on there that had been there for 100 years, and I had the most experience in regards to like drug stuff. So that's how I ended up with Stryker, my first canine dog.
So you were just like a normal police officer then in Wahpeton?
Yep.
What was your experience like there?
Really good. It's a good group of people.
Obviously, 14 years is a lot to cover for a broad question like that.
That's fine. I'll cover the high points.
Yeah.
I didn't see racism from our officers. I didn't see anything that like big departments have. Like everybody went out every day, and a lot of them weren't like balls of fire. You know, and when you're young, you want to go save the world, like one parking ticket at a time. And
Yeah.
it was a huge adjustment for me to go from like that running and gunning and being wild to, I think we're going to go patrol this area and do school patrol. Or, you know, the chief called me in one day. He's like, I got a big case for you. I'm like, great. What do we, you know, human traffickers, drug dealers, what are we going to get? And he's like, we have these 17 library books that are overdue, and I need you to go. Like, legit, true story.
Wow.
And I looked at him, and I looked at the sheet, and I looked at him, and I like looked around, like, is he f***ing with me? Like, and you could tell from the look on my face, he's like, I can remember, he's like, boy, being a police officer is not all about shooting bad guys and driving fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this sucks. And like, I had a chip on my shoulder about it for a while, because I'm like, God, why am I bothering these people for their library books? But it's, you know, it's municipal property, and that's your job. You don't get to pick and choose the, you know, the laws you enforce. So
Right.
It was an adjustment. And then we went on to like, they sent me to pretty much whatever training I asked. Like, I got to go to drug recognition expert training for like drugged and impaired drivers, which is a 2-year ordeal to get that certification. And they sent me to patrol rifle operator school, methods of instructor school. I was our expandable baton instructor for quite some time. You get more of a one-on-one situation with them, and then, you know, you also learn each other's quirks and how to work together. And I had some great leadership, line level leadership. You know, and I worked with some people I didn't like, but like, they're still good people, you know? Mm-hmm. And so it was a great experience. I have nothing negative to say about it. When I finally decided to quit, it wasn't in the best situation, and we can get into that if you want to.
Yeah. I was going to say we'll transition into cop to starting your own business,
Yep.
but what happened there?
So at that point, I was pretty deep in the grips of like panic attacks, and like, I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought I was going crazy, and it's PTSD, man. It sneaks up on you. It's quiet. It's a silent killer. You don't know that it's like it's after you, and it like things would haunt me. I wouldn't sleep. I was withdrawing from a lot of the things, my duties, and you know, just putting forth a effort. And like, that's not me. I'm an overachiever, and so. One day I came in, I'm like, I need to go home. And I'd taken a lot of time off, and the other guys were sick of like working extra. And one of the guys kind of like made a joke about it, and that wasn't the day. And I'm like, and my exact words were, "F you, I'm done. Here's my shit." And I dropped it on the counter, and I took my badge off and said, I'm keeping the dog, and I left. And I never went back. And I look at that like, they knew what was up. Like, they knew that I wasn't, like, it was time for me to not be there anymore. And, you know, at that time my business was taking off, so I had a lot of outward pressure from that. And I wasn't taking care of myself. My weight was terrible. I ended up getting my testosterone check later on, and it was like 17 or something, like 70.
Is that super low?
It's supposed to be like 1,100.
Oh, wow.
So 900 to 1,100, somewhere in there.
Sure.
And so there was just a lot of things that went along with that were real negative, real negative. And like, they let me have a have a retirement party. They gave me a service plaque, and like they were real good to me. And like that says something about like a place that you work where they recognize that like you're broken, but I wasn't to the point where I wanted help. So there was nothing they could really do. Like people always come, well, why didn't they? It's not their job, man. Like all I would have had to do is say, I don't feel right. I need to go somewhere. And they would have sent me. But I wasn't in a place, like it took me another almost 4 years after quitting to like find my peace and like go through a program that like changed my life.
What you mentioned, you did a program that helped you through all of that. Why don't you just give a brief rundown of what that looked like?
Yeah, I'll even tell you the story how it happened. So one of my buddies, Ty, he's from this area, and he'd seen in his job, and he'd gone through this program called bouldercrest.org Warrior Path. And it's for police officers and military and first responders that have kind of seen some things. And he called me one day. He's like, hey, bro, I want you to check this program out. And I'm like, man, I'm good. Like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think you do. And then I blew him off for like another 6 months. And then one day my wife's like, dude, you need some help. You're not even fun to be around. Your kid doesn't want to be around you. You're just not you. And I'm like, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
And then like another month went by, and one day I was just like, nope, I need to remedy this immediately. And so I called Ty, and Ty called Shannon Strope, who, God bless her, like
That's the same person that Brody mentioned on his episode, Shannon.
yeah. So did Brody go through Warrior Path?
No, he went through one down in Iowa.
Okay.
It was a Christian
Okay,
version.
but Shannon was there too, or
Shannon, no, he just went to Shannon.
Oh,
Yeah.
she was
Tom.
up in,
Before
is she
that.
up in Fargo or something?
Nope. Shannon Strope is out of Boulder Crest is out of Texas, I believe.
Oh, so that's different Shannon?
Different Shannon.
That's crazy because
Yeah.
it's the same name, but
Yeah,
okay, so different deal though.
No
Okay.
problem. So I called Shannon, and she was like, do you remember that show Get Him to the Greek, where they're like, all they want to do is just get him on the plane so they can get him to where he needs to be? It was like that. Like, I can be pretty manipulative if I want. So I'm like, I'm not going to go. I started a fight with my wife, and she's like, whatever, be pissed at me later, get on the plane.
Sure.
And so then I'm like, I'm on the plane. I'm thinking, who the do I know in Texas I could escape to? I can like win at therapy and lie. Like, I don't. And so I get to Texas, and they're waiting for me. And they're like, and they're like big tattooed dudes. And they're like, man, you look like you're not happy to be here. And I'm like, no, I'm happy to be here. I'm a little overwhelmed. And like that went away in like 3 minutes. Like the first thing one of the guides did was like disclose to me some crap in their life. Well, then I'm like, well, I'm not going to see somebody who doesn't like know what they're talking about. And that like set the whole tone for that program. So I'm in Texas, and there's 8 of us. And then the instructors, and all the instructors are graduates from the program. So I'm not going to like a psychiatrist with like a happy family picture in the background, like Ed and I were talking about, or like a young psychiatrist that's like never seen anything in their life. They grew up with like a healthy background, and now they're going to fix me. Like,
Yeah.
you're not fixing shit. I am broken. Like, and by the time I was done with that program, I had like a whole new lease on life. I was motivated more in my career than I'd ever been. I worked on rebuilding, family and friendships, and like stop being so much of a hermit, and so yeah, it was a really good thing. It changed my life.
And then after that transitioned to you going full time into your own businesses.
Yeah,
That was before, right?
That was before. Yeah, when I quit, I didn't really have a choice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I had asked, I tried to get North Dakota Workforce Safety to give me PTSD retirement, and they were pieces of garbage to me. Like, I remember one guy's like, well, I have a friend that went to war, and he says it's not that bad. He actually said that to me.
That's crazy.
And my response was not something that like we can talk about here, but I was pretty hot. And that's like where the big change came, because I'm like, send me all my money I sent you guys. I want every last penny of it. I'm done with you. I'm not going to. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. You'll lose $27,000 in all your interest, and you'll never have retirement. I don't care. You guys, you're not working for me. You're not trying to help me. I gave 20 years of my life to the state, and you're treating me like I'm a faker. Like, that's how I looked at it. Like, you're like, do you think I would fake throwing away 20 years because I want a paycheck so I can sit on my butt? Like, I work 100 hours a week. And so that really put me off, and they like sent me a check, and I cashed it and put all the money in my backpack, and I told my wife, I'm like, here's what we need for bills for this month. I'm going to go to Alaska and like meet the guys that have the Mammoth and the things that I want to use, and like go to the source.
Sure.
And she's like, you like, don't go up there and like, and so like,
funny, but not funny.
Well, no, dude, you can laugh. It's hilarious now. Like who does that? Like, I just loaded up a backpack full of money and went to Alaska.
Yeah.
Like, that's not normal.
One question I had really quick before you went into that.
No, that's fine.
You were kind of finishing up with your police career. You were just making knives at the time, or what were you doing first in your business?
Knives first, and gun grips. Then, like, by the time I'd quit, I was making knives and gun grips, and
Both
gun
of them.
grips had really taken off. Like,
Okay.
I was starting to get kind of cool in that gun world, that Instagram gun world. And
How many years ago was this? When did you start your business?
I want to say full time, like 6 years.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's been a while since I was a cop, but like, it really hasn't, like, you know?
Yeah.
So, like I said, the PD was so good to me. They let me do your retired credentials. So, like, I still get to go every year and shoot and qualify.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so that I can carry, and like, I have nothing to, like, if you want a place to work where like people care about you, that's the place. So,
And then let's go back to now going to Alaska to try and find woolly mammoth tusk to put into your gun and knife, or gun grips and knives, right?
yeah, knife handles. Yeah. So I'd met a guy on the internet, Chuck Leak, and he's the guy that like kind of helps like the people out in the villages, like subsistence living, or, you know, they would go out and find, as long as they were Native Alaskans, they could find it and bring it in. And, you know, Chuck would help put me in touch with them or whatever. And then while I was up there, I get off the plane and the guy picks me up with like a 1956 Studebaker, like this green, old, rusty box with a dog in the back seat. And I remember thinking, I'm never coming home. Like, the last thing that I'm going to see is this green Studebaker, you know?
Yeah.
And the nicest, most kind, caring man in the world. Like, the first thing he did, he brought us to like the Alaska Transit Station, which is like a garbage dump. And like, he went out there and like talked to the people that were like destitute and like digging through the garbage to find things to sell. And like, he would take care of those people. And like, that was so amazing to me. Like first of all, he allowed me to come down there, and he's going to allow me a glimpse into this world. Second, he's just such an amazing human being. And then he's like, do you want to meet my buddy John Reeves, who owns a Boneyard Alaska? And I'm like, yeah, I really do. And if you don't know about the Boneyard Alaska, it's like, on Instagram, it's the Boneyard Alaska. You know, most interesting man in the world. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's just an amazing human being. And I went up there and I kind of just told him my story. I didn't pontificate on like being screwed up, because at the time I didn't really know that like the things that I was doing was not normal.
Sure.
Like, to me, it was normal. It was just a Thursday, you know? And I don't know if he saw something in me, or I later found out that like he just left college one time in Florida and said, I'm going to Alaska, and like made his way. And so we kind of had a same origin story. And, you know, John has been one of my biggest supporters. He brought my grips on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, and he's bought like our first firearms we manufactured. He bought the first 2 off the line. And like flew us out to like hang out in Florida with him. And like, he's a great man.
So the boneyard is like not that big, right?
Nope, it's not.
A
It's
few like 5 acres or something like that.
yeah. And it's one of the most mass die-offs of Pleistocene era mammals and artifacts and hand tools. And it's the most magical place on earth. If you're like a rock nerd, like that's the place to be. And so John and I got to be pretty good friends from that. And I ended up buying a ton of Mammoth and bringing it home. And the rest is kind of history. So
then you used your Mammoth tusks to make grips.
Gun
with
grips, yeah.
How?
So about halfway through this journey of full-time work, my brother-in-law, Joe, his wife is my wife's twin sister. So they moved down here, and she's a teacher.
Sure.
And he's like, man, COVID happened, and like his bar was the general manager of was like closing down, and he had to get like this job working at like a computer store or something. And he hated it. And he's like, oh, man, I want to make knives. I'm like, you start tomorrow, we're 50-50 partners. Like, I don't want to do this alone.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were working out of my garage. So it was like two guys, like elbow to elbow in a garage, you know, with all this equipment and Mammoth. And, but to answer your question, Joe pioneered like a lot of, like, we knew kind of how to stabilize it, but like Joe just kept working at it to get it just right so that it didn't break apart. And then we started like laminating it to like carbon fiber and those kind of things to like really strengthen it up, because like I'm a cop at heart. I was a cop for 20 years. So like I want my gun to operate and not break apart if you're going to shoot it. Mm-hmm. You know, you can have a barbecue gun where you walk around like, hey, look at my gun. Like, look at the cool grips. But if I shoot it, it's going to blow up. Like, what's the point?
Right.
You know? So that's kind of how we learned how to do that. And there were some people along the way that like kind of helped us a little bit, but like they would never tell us like exactly how to do it. So
yeah, it seems pretty specific. Like as far as what you're doing is unique.
Yeah, it's pretty specific. There's a couple other guys that do it, but they don't do it like us. I'm not going to say we do it better. We do it different.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of makers in this industry that are like, you can't, like, that are jerks. You know what I mean? And I don't want to be that guy. Like I'm moderate or admin a couple gun grip pages, and like I put other people's stuff on there all the time. Like,
sure.
You know, it's we work together. We do different things. Some of the stuff we do the same but different.
What other materials have you used that you've been able to put into these gun grips? I saw giraffe bone is on your website right now.
Yep.
Meteorite. How do you get that? Like, that's crazy.
So there's wild stories about meteorite. Meteorite's hard to come by and it's expensive.
Yeah, I could imagine.
And I got some of the meteorite from like an old museum that had closed down. And like there was like a story with it like back in the early 70s or 80s, I think, that like a guy had smuggled it out for this museum. And then he didn't pay off the right people. So like like, I don't know if that's true, but like, you know, we've used stabilized seaweed. We've, when I went to the Bahamas, I'm always looking for like different material that no one else will use.
Yeah.
And like I scuba dive a lot. So like we went and visited Pablo Escobar's plane that went down that was all packed full of, and I wanted to go in and get some of the metal off of that so I can make gun grips. Like I have Pablo Escobar's plane like metal in my grips. But the Bahamian people did not like that idea. So I wasn't allowed to do that. But I did get to go visit like one of the oldest church in like that area of islands. And it was like from 17 something, and they were doing a remodeling underneath the church, and like they had cut out some of the old lumber, and I'm like, can I buy that? So like I have some wood from like a 1700s church, or
wow.
like, and I paid for it. It was all legal,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like they were just gonna burn it. But to give something life, like we have panels from a really old military ship, like the wood decking. People will send us carbon fiber from like planes, from like, if it's weird, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Any weird material we can find. When I was looking for that deceased informant in the river, I actually found some old, very, 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 very old, possibly Pleistocene era bison bones. And like, so we've used those. Sky's the limit for the most part.
So everything you do is it's pretty much just not duplicate. It's
Correct.
just one of a kind.
Yeah, I don't make anything that I think that you can, like, none of them will match.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be close, but they're all one of a kind.
Wow.
And that's what makes us different.
And it sounds like every piece that you make has a story behind it. Like the church, the meteorite, every single piece.
Every single piece we use, we only use real materials. I want to be different and original, and I want like my grandfather's name to be remembered as like something that, because he was an original guy, and he was an amazing war hero and a great person, and I do everything I do every day. I'm like, would my grandfather be proud of this? Mm-hmm. And for a lot of times in my life, like he wouldn't have been. So it's cool that I get to have that now.
So for people listening, how do they buy these?
So you'd go to burkettcustoms.com, BURKETT customs.com, or you can follow us on Instagram, Burkett Customs, Facebook, Burkett Family Custom Knives.
One other thing on your business, how did it feel to be featured on Joe Rogan? Did you know it was happening before it happened?
So not like that.
Yeah.
I had talked to John, and I'm like, dude, you should give Joe Rogan a set of our grips. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, really?
John goes on like once a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He'll be on again in like 2-3 weeks. I think they just announced it the other day on your buddy's.
Yep, Steven Ranella.
Yeah, on Ranella's podcast. I shouldn't say your buddy or your guy.
I hope he's my buddy someday.
Yeah.
But anyway.
You got to manifest it into existence, man. So I sent John those grips, and then he's like, hey, you should watch a show. I'm like, okay. And I'm watching. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is out of hand. And 2 hours later, we'd sold out of every single thing we had in stock.
That's
like,
unreal.
it was like a lot of money, Everything was just gone. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is the nicest thing that any human being on earth has ever done for me. Like, you have thrust our grips into the largest podcast in the world. Like, millions of people are going to see these. And then like Joe liked him, so he left him on like his desk forever. So there was like 3 episodes where they were on there, and he was fidgeting with them and talking about them. And I have like some clips from like Save Our Parks where they're like, hey, what are those? And it's like Joe Rogan, oh, that's Mammoth Tusk. And I'm like, you ever want to flex? Like, have Joe Rogan like talking about your product.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where to go from here, but I don't know that there's an up at this point.
Yeah.
So.
You got to get on. That's what you got to do.
It's pretty wild.
So like for people who didn't see that, not only did he give Joe like the products, but he also pulled up the website, kind of showed everything. So that was a big feature. Yeah,
that was super cool. And I was very like in awe and humbled by like the generosity of John. Like John's got a great story to tell, and he doesn't like need me to be interesting. So for him to take a little bit of his time and do that, I don't know very many people like that. So I didn't really know how to even respond, or like thank you isn't sufficient, but you know, you don't want to seem dumb either where you're like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like, it literally is, you know?
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was wild.
Through everything that you went through your entire life.
Okay.
Between your childhood, law enforcement, and entrepreneurship, it can be really about anything. What advice would you have to people listening to this podcast?
Be genuine in who you are, and like, don't be scared to like say this isn't for me and it's time to make a change. You know, you get comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Like, people in dead end jobs and they hate them and they're like miserable. Like, you only get one life, so change it. You know, it's scary and it's hard, and sometimes it takes people to push you in the right direction. And like, fortunately for me, like my wife, Lisa, like held it down for a long time, like with her business with Pinewood Kennels. Like, when I was starting out, like we weren't making it, like her business that she created, that I just played a small role in, like that held things down for me to get to be cool on the internet, and me to get to like go follow my dream. And then, you know, had she not done that, I never would have. So like, get somebody in your life that like, even when things are down and crappy and you're not where you want to be and you're not who you want to be, still like show up every day to help you. You know, and like have a relationship with your kids. They're the only ones that are going to get, in the end of the day, they're the only ones that are going to give about you. Like,
yeah,
if you're, you can be a dirtbag to everybody else, but like your kids are going to love you for you, regardless of like your behavior. You know, kids are resilient, and they're willing to forgive and forget. And like, that's a huge thing for me because my daughter is my world. So that's my advice. Just don't be scared to like make a change and realize that like, you don't need to be unhappy. There's no reason for that. Like, do something about it. Nobody's coming. Do it yourself.
That's great advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. This was awesome to get to know you, get to know your story. You've been through a lot, and to come on here and talk about this is huge. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
One thing we do at the end of our show, as we were sponsored by Giants, we let you pick out a bag of those seeds. Besides the Big Easy because it's already open, but go ahead.
Thanks. I'm a cashew guy. So yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you
Good
very
deal.
much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for watching the Beyond the Spotlight podcast. Make sure you come back next week on Monday at 6 p.m. We'll see you guys then.
Peace.
Peace.
Real ones with me, I know we gon' beat the odds. Counterfeit, guess it from the thought of it. People fake, think they need to start a kid.